Have you ever looked into someone's eyes, the person lying beside you, smiling at you, holding your hand, and suddenly felt that something just wasn't right? Not fear, not love. Just that unsettling sense that you were standing on the edge of a dark cliff, and the person beside you might be the one to push you off. What if the woman in your life isn't who she says she is? What if behind that charming laugh, gentle touch, and soft whispers is a heart filled with manipulation, control, and cold indifference? Before we go further, I want to invite you to subscribe to Stoic Sage, the place where ancient wisdom meets modern life. Like this video if you've ever felt emotionally drained by someone you couldn't quite understand. And trust me, watch till the very end. These 7 signs might just save your love life and your sanity. Let's take a walk through the storm, guided by the quiet torch of Stoic wisdom. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers and Roman emperors, once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." But what happens when the soul beside you is dyed in shadows, in deceit, and evil? Let me tell you a story. There was a man named Lucius, a successful merchant in Rome. Calm, focused, disciplined, a true student of the Stoic path. He believed in reason over passion, in controlling emotions, in the wisdom of silence. But Lucius fell in love. Her name was Caelia. She was beautiful, captivating. Everyone in Rome whispered about her charm. But to Lucius, she was more than charm. She was warmth, mystery, and affection. For a time, he felt invincible with her by his side. But slowly, things began to change. And in those changes, we find the first evident sign of an evil woman. 1. She controls through guilt. Have you ever been in love so deeply that your entire world began to orbit around that one person? Every decision, every thought, every emotion somehow linked back to her. She became your morning and your night. And yet, despite doing everything you could to make her happy, something always felt off. Let's pause here. Think about her, yes. Her, the one you once loved. Or maybe still do. The one whose smile could calm your storm, or set it ablaze. Do you remember how she used to look at you when you did something sweet? Do you remember how your chest would rise with pride just from seeing her happy? Now let me ask you something darker. Have you ever done something small, like going out with friends, spending time alone, or simply not replying quickly? And suddenly she went cold? Not angry, just withdrawn. Like the warmth left the room and you were the one who caused it. And when you asked what was wrong, she'd say something like, "Nothing, I'm fine." Or worse, "I just thought I mattered more to you." That's guilt, my friend, and not the kind that helps you grow. This is the type that chains your mind, not your actions. Let me tell you a story, your story, because if you're still watching, I know this isn't just a video. This is real. There was a time you stayed late at work because you were trying to build something for both of you. But when you came home, instead of a hug, you got a sigh, a sad face, that heavy silence. You asked, what's wrong? She replied, "Nothing. You're just always busy. I just miss when we used to matter to each other." Now tell me, how did you feel? Not angry, not free, guilty. And that's how it begins. You started doing things not because they were right or stoic, or aligned with your principles, but because you didn't want her to feel bad, or make you feel like you had failed. And yet you did everything. You canceled plans. You stopped doing what made you happy. You abandoned your peace to keep hers intact. And still, somehow, you were always made to feel like it wasn't enough. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." But what if the enemy never revealed herself, only made you feel like the enemy for simply existing, choosing living? If you've ever felt this, then listen closely. You are not alone. You are not crazy. And most importantly, you are not the villain. Guilt in the hands of someone loving becomes growth. But in the hands of someone manipulative, it becomes a weapon. Ask yourself now silently, did she ever love me? Or did she just love how she could control me? Let that question sit in your soul. Let it shake the illusions and stay with me. Because we're just getting started. The next signs will show you truths that perhaps you've buried deep inside. But I promise you, this journey through the darkness leads to one thing: light. 2, she thrives in chaos. Have you ever been in a relationship where one moment you felt like the most loved person on earth and the next, like a complete stranger in your own life? Like you were walking through a beautiful garden one minute, and the next you were trapped in a storm you never saw coming? If that's you, then this isn't just a video. This is your story. Close your eyes for a second, just for a moment. Think about her smile, her laugh. That first date where everything felt perfect. That night she said, "I've never felt like this before." That time she ran her fingers through your hair and looked at you like you were her entire world. Remember those moments? Hold on to them. Now tell me, how did everything change so fast? How did those soft, calm evenings turn into constant tension? How did I love you slowly transform into, you never listen, you don't care, or worse, dead silence? It happened to him too, the man this story is about. A man who once stood strong like a Roman statue, grounded, focused, stoic, his name. Let's call him you, because honestly, this is about you. You used to wake up with a plan. You had structure, work, gym, maybe a little meditation or a quiet cup of coffee at sunrise. That calm, disciplined life. But she entered your world like wildfire. And in the beginning, it felt exciting. Spontaneous road trips, late night talks, random adventures. It felt alive. But slowly, that spontaneity became chaos. Plans started getting canceled last minute. She'd make you feel guilty for sticking to your routine. You'd try to build something stable, but she'd always find a way to knock it over. Emotionally, mentally, sometimes even financially. One week she'd tell you you're the best thing that's ever happened to her. The next week she'd need space, accuse you of being too much, too distant, too cold, anything that made you question yourself. That's how chaos works. You stop trusting your own instincts. You stop following your routine. You start adjusting your entire life around her emotional weather forecast. Marcus Aurelius, in all his wisdom, once wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." But how can you live in the present when the person beside you constantly pulls you into storms from the past or fears of the future? Here's the truth, she didn't want peace. Because peace is where you see clearly. Peace is where you start to feel your own power again. And in peace, you might realize that she's not who you thought she was. So she keeps the storm alive. Ask yourself, have you been walking on eggshells? Are you constantly confused about where you stand? Do you feel like every time things are going well, she finds a way to light a fire in the middle of it? That's not love. That's emotional chaos. And some people thrive in it, because chaos is where they stay in control. And you're tired. Stay with me, because the next signs are going to hit even harder, but they'll also show you the way out. 3. She never accepts blame. Let me ask you a question you may have never dared to ask yourself out loud. Have you ever apologized for something you didn't even do? Just to keep the peace with her? Just so she wouldn't get angry? Just so the cold silence would go away? Just so you wouldn't lose her? If you're still watching, I know you've been there. And I want you to pause for just a second and remember that moment, the argument, the silence, the way your heart raced when you tried to explain your side, and the way she looked at you. Like you were the problem. Do you remember that? Let's go back to your story, because again, this isn't fiction. This is what you lived. There was a time, maybe not too long ago, when you made a mistake. A small one. Maybe you forgot to call. Maybe you were late. Maybe you said something the wrong way, and instead of her showing patience or understanding, she exploded, or worse, she withdrew into this cold, silent punishment. You apologized, you owned it, you tried to fix it, and yet, days later, she still brought it up, again and again, like a weapon, not a memory. But then came a moment when she messed up. Maybe she flirted with someone else. Maybe she crossed a boundary. Maybe she hurt you with her words. And when you tried to talk about it, she didn't say sorry. She said, "Why are you making such a big deal out of this?" Or, "If you were better to me, I wouldn't have acted that way." She flipped the script. Suddenly, her mistake became your fault. Your pain became her opportunity to play the victim. That's what we're talking about here. She never accepts blame. No matter what happens, she finds a way to avoid accountability. And brother, that's not just a red flag. That's a blueprint of manipulation. Marcus Aurelius said, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. He didn't say this so we would become bitter. He said it so we'd become prepared. Prepared to recognize that some people will never look in the mirror because they are too skilled at turning the mirror toward you. And when someone refuses to see their own flaws, when someone always blames others for the chaos they create, when they never say "I'm sorry" without a but attached, they aren't loving you. They're using you to protect their perfect image. Ask yourself, When was the last time she truly took responsibility? When was the last time she apologized without turning it around on you? If you can't remember, you already know the truth. You weren't in a relationship. You were in a courtroom, and you were always the one on trial. But not anymore. Because the truth has a way of cutting through the fog, and that's what you're doing right now. Stay with me. There are more signs coming, and they'll reveal everything you need to see. 4. She isolates you from people who care. Let me ask you something that might hit a little too close to home. When was the last time you spoke to your best friend about your relationship and told the full truth? Not the sugar-coated version, not the edited story to protect her image. The real truth. Can you even remember? You see, in the beginning, she loved your friends. She said things like, "I love how close you are with your boys." She told you your family was so sweet. She even encouraged you to keep those relationships strong. But over time, something changed. Slowly, subtly, quietly, like a fog that rolls in before you even realize the weather's turned. One day she asked, "Why do you even hang out with him? He's kind of immature, don't you think?" Another day she said, "I just feel like your family doesn't really like me. It's awkward." And before you knew it, you started pulling back. Just a little at first. Missing a hangout. Ignoring a text. Not because you wanted to, but because you didn't want to upset her. That's how isolation begins. Let's go back to your story. There was a time when you were surrounded by people who loved you. Your circle was small maybe, but solid. People who knew your heart. Who laughed with you when life was good and stood by you when it wasn't. But she slowly built a wall between you and them. And the scariest part? She made it feel like your idea. She made you believe they were the problem, that they were jealous or negative, or just didn't get your relationship. But let me ask you, who was really the one pulling strings? Do you remember that time your best friend said, "I don't think she's good for you," and you got defensive? Not because you disagreed deep down, but because you were afraid he might be right. Do you remember when your sister said, "You've changed," and you told her she was overreacting? That's what emotional isolation does. It makes you doubt the people who love you most. It convinces you to trade your support system for one single person, her. And once you're alone, once you've drifted far enough from your people, she becomes your entire world. And that's exactly how she likes it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." But brother, when you're isolated, your thoughts stop being your own. They start becoming hers. You feel more alone than ever, but you don't know why. And maybe right now, hearing this, a part of you is remembering a friend you stopped calling, a brother you left unread, a mother who cried when you said you wouldn't understand. They weren't trying to pull you away. They were trying to pull you back to yourself, but she wouldn't let them. And now, you're waking up. You're remembering the truth. And that's the first step toward freedom. Stay with me, because the next signs will open your eyes wider than ever before. 5. She gaslights you constantly. Let me ask you a simple question, but answer it with your heart, not your mind. Have you ever felt confused in your own relationship? Like, you couldn't even trust your own thoughts anymore? You'd walk away from a conversation sure you were right, but by the end of it, you were apologizing. You were doubting yourself. You were questioning your memory, your judgment, even your sanity. That's not a coincidence, my friend. That's gaslighting, and it's one of the most toxic tools an evil woman will use. Let me bring you back into your story. There was a time you noticed something off. Maybe she was texting someone too often. Maybe her story didn't add up one night. Maybe you just felt it deep in your gut. That quiet whisper that said, "Something's wrong." So you brought it up, and she laughed. Not a laugh of joy, but that cold, condescending laugh. The one that says, "You're crazy for even thinking that." "Wow, you really think I would do that?" she asked. Suddenly, the conversation flipped. You weren't expressing a concern, you were defending yourself. You weren't asking a question, you were being interrogated for daring to ask it. Do you remember that feeling? That sinking in your chest? That moment where you wanted to believe her so badly, but something inside you was still screaming, and still. You silenced that voice because she made you feel like it was irrational, paranoid, insecure. That's gaslighting. And she didn't just do it once, did she? She forgot something she promised, and when you brought it up, she said, "You never told me that." She said something hurtful, and when you reacted, she said, "You're too sensitive. I was just joking." She flipped the script so many times, You forgot what the original script even said. You stopped bringing things up. You stopped trusting your instincts. And worst of all, you started trusting her version of reality more than your own. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change. It is the truth I seek." But gaslighting strips you of that truth. It turns your pursuit of understanding into a mental maze, and she becomes the one holding the map, only she changes it every time. You get close to the exit. Let me ask you something deeply personal. How many times did you leave a conversation with her feeling worse than when you entered it? How many times did you wonder if you were the problem? You weren't. You just loved someone who couldn't handle being questioned, someone who needed control more than she wanted connection. And the more you tried to make sense of the madness, the more she made you believe you were mad, but not anymore. Because now you're seeing clearly. Now you're remembering what it feels like to trust your own thoughts again. Stay with me, brother, because the next signs, they'll bring everything full circle. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find the strength to finally let go of the woman who made you forget who you are. 6. She uses intimacy as a weapon. Let me ask you something that might hurt a little, but it's important. Have you ever felt like your love, your touch, your connection was only welcomed when it suited her? Not when you needed comfort, not when you craved closeness, only when she wanted something from you. If that struck a nerve, stay with me, because what you're feeling, it's not your fault. Let's go back to your story, to the nights when the two of you would lie in bed, inches apart and yet feel like strangers. You reached for her hand, and she pulled away. You asked if everything was okay, and she said, "I'm just tired." But it wasn't just one night, was it? It became a pattern, a cycle. One day she was cold, distant, unresponsive. The next she was all over you, sweet, seductive, affectionate, but only when it served her. Only when she needed to calm your questions. Only when she sensed you might finally walk away. That's what makes it so twisted. Because she knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't sharing love, she was using it as a tool, a weapon. You wanted to feel close. You wanted to make love, not just in the physical sense, but emotional, intimate. But she turned it into a transaction. Do this and maybe I'll give you what you want. And if you upset her, if you challenged her, questioned her, or set a boundary, she cut you off. Not just from intimacy, but from connection, from affection, from the very thing that made you feel loved. Marcus Aurelius said, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." But when you're with a woman who weaponizes love, you start to question your own needs. You start thinking, maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe I don't deserve her affection right now. But brother, you do, you always did. Intimacy should never feel like a reward for obedience. It should never be held hostage until you fall back in line. Let me ask you, do you remember the first time you felt her pull away after an argument? Do you remember how confused you felt? Wondering how love could disappear so fast? That wasn't love. That was control. She learned your patterns. She knew what you needed to feel safe. And she withheld it like a punishment. And the worst part? There were moments, brief, beautiful moments, when it felt real again. When she reached for you and for a second, you believed she truly loved you. But deep down you knew it wasn't real. It was survival for her, not for you. You were clinging to crumbs, crumbs of attention, crumbs of connection, crumbs of love. But you deserve the whole feast. So keep watching, because the next signs, they'll remind you of who you really are, and how much more you deserve than weaponized love. Stay strong. You're almost there. 7. She never takes accountability. Let me ask you something that might make you feel exposed. In all your fights, all your disagreements, who's the one that always ends up saying sorry? Be honest. How many times have you said, "I'm sorry," just to keep the peace, even when deep down, you knew you weren't wrong? Let's step back into your story, back to those moments when everything felt like it was your fault even when it wasn't. Do you remember the time she blew up at you over something small? Maybe it was a message on your phone or a comment you made, completely harmless. And instead of talking, she exploded. You tried to explain yourself calmly. You tried to understand where it came from. But she didn't want understanding. She wanted submission. She twisted the story until somehow you were the one in the wrong. And so you gave in. Maybe I could have said it differently. Maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe I'm overreacting. But let me ask you, was it really you? Or was it the fact that she never once said, I was wrong? That she never admitted fault? Never apologized first? Never took ownership? That's the sign, my friend. An evil woman won't take accountability, because admitting fault would mean giving up power. And in her mind, that's unacceptable. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth." But she doesn't seek truth. She seeks control. And control doesn't allow space for reflection, for growth, for honesty. Think about it. Did she ever circle back after a fight and say, I shouldn't have said that? I was unfair. Or did she pretend like nothing happened the next day, hoping you'd drop it? Did she ever ask how her words made you feel? Or did she always make herself the victim, even when she was the one who caused the pain? This is where the manipulation gets even deeper. Because you started holding yourself to a higher standard. You started self-correcting, analyzing every word before it left your mouth. You tiptoed around her mood, just to avoid conflict. But did she ever offer you the same grace? So because in her eyes she was never wrong. And that, my brother, is not love. That's emotional tyranny. Let me bring you back to something. Do you remember the first time you confronted her, hoping for an honest talk, and instead she turned it into a guilt trip? She cried, told you how hard things are for her, and suddenly, you were comforting the very person who hurt you. That's the game. That's how she stays blameless even when everything is burning around her. But you're waking up now. You're starting to see that taking all the blame isn't strength. It's surrender. And you've surrendered long enough. Lucius left Calia. It wasn't dramatic. He didn't scream. He simply walked away. He returned to his discipline, to his readings, to his peace. It took months, but he rebuilt. And he came to understand a final truth. It is not unloving to leave someone who poisons your soul. The Stoics didn't believe in hatred, but they believed in discernment. You must discern when a person is no longer an ally to your virtue, but a threat to it. Love isn't blindness. Love is clarity. And if a woman in your life shows these signs, don't wait for your soul to rot. Step back, reflect, and if necessary, walk away without anger, but with resolve. Because in the end, it is better to walk alone in peace than be held in the arms of someone who hides a dagger beneath her smile. If this story and these signs opened your eyes even a little, then make sure to subscribe to Stoic Sage. Hit the like button if you believe in living with wisdom over impulse. And remember, Stoicism isn't about judging others, but about protecting your soul, your virtue, your path. Watch this video again if you need to. Share it with someone who might be in a toxic relationship, and hold fast to the teachings of Marcus Aurelius. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time,